Last night, very interesting. The one open primary, which was Rhode Island, Bernie won. All the closed primaries, Hillary won. I think that tells us something about open and closed primaries as much as it tells us anything about Hillary and Bernie. It's increasingly unlikely that, based on this election, that Bernie is going to be the nominee. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't stay in, and B, that he won't have considerable power both at the convention and afterwards. And those are important things. And staying in the race, if there's two ways to do that. And we don't know yet which way he's going to go, although the signs are that he's going to go in the second of the two ways I'm going to describe, which I think is a good thing. The first would be to stay in the race and keep on basically beating up Hillary Clinton, talking about her transcripts and all this kind of stuff. I personally think that the time is past for much of that. It's drawing contrast. I realize he's not beating her up. He's drawing contrast. He's trying to present the issues and all that. But everybody knows this stuff now, right? Democrats all over the country can basically recite the list of hits on Hillary that Bernie would have or that progressives would have, and vice versa. And so that's one way to stay in, to continue competing directly against Hillary Clinton. The other way to stay in the race up until the end is to start competing against the Republicans, so that both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are promoting their own separate agendas, because they do have somewhat different strategies to accomplish things, and contrast them with Republicans and go forward from here on that. And, because Bernie has said he's not going to get out of the race. And that seems, he's going to end up in this, if he's not the nominee, then he's going to end up one of the most powerful people in the United States Senate. And that's no small thing. And Michael Lerner, who is a friend of mine, he's an amazing man, Rabbi Michael Lerner, wrote a brilliant piece for today's Huffington Post. And I just, I want to echo this. But let me just repeat the 2 points that I've made so far. Number one, I was talking about open and closed primaries. I think that if, given the fact that more than 40% of Americans call themselves independents, it depends on the state, but it's well over a third of Americans call themselves independents. Roughly a third call themselves Democrats, and fewer than a third call themselves Republicans. So if either party wants to bring independents into their party, the starting point for that is getting them to vote for a member of your party. And closed primaries prevent that from happening. So I would argue that it's bad for both political parties to have closed primaries. I know that, in the Democratic closed primaries in New York, for example, they go back to 1918, back to the old Tammany Hall machine. To a large extent, the whole idea of closed primaries, which I have defended in the past on this program, and I'm seriously rethinking right now. But there is a middle ground, which I'll get to in just a second. But I think the whole idea of closed primaries might have made a lot of sense when most Americans were I'm either a Republican or a Democrat, and there were very few independents, which was by and large the case in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. It's a high level of identification. But basically, since Reaganomics, since we saw a whole group of politicians basically lie to us and destroy the American dream, both Democrats and Republicans, although, let's acknowledge this was led by Reagan and the so-called Reagan Republicans, followed by the so-called Reagan Democrats, that a lot of people are now saying, neither one of these parties have anything for me. Screw this. I'll be an independent. So the question is, how do the parties get people back into them? And from my point of view, specifically, how does the Democratic Party get people back into them? And step one is, put forward inspiring candidates, people like Bernie Sanders and progressive candidates all across the board. Put forth those candidates. And number two, let people vote for them in your primaries. And those people then will feel like, okay, I did that. Now, the way to do that is what's called a semi-closed or a semi-open primary is to say you can register your party affiliation on the day that you vote. I mean, in other words, no matter what you're registered as, the day that you vote, you can show up and you can say, okay, I'd like a Democratic ballot or I'd like a Republican ballot. And at that point, you sign a form saying, okay, now consider me a Democrat. Put me on that mailing list or put me on that list. And I think that would be a really good thing. I think it would be a really good thing for both parties. And it's a compromise between open and closed primaries. Okay, so I've said that. Number two, talking about, how should Senator Sanders go forward? How should Hillary Clinton go forward? Just, once again, let me repeat what I said. I think that both of them need to be taking on the Republicans. And the reason why I say this is I want to get to this piece that Michael Lerner wrote. Titled, it's over in the Huffington Post today. It's called "Create a Tea Party of the Left Within the Democratic Party Now." And he starts out, and Rabbi Lerner is, an absolutely brilliant guy. And he starts out, he says, much of my family perished in the Holocaust, which is also true of Senator Sanders. He says, much of my family perished in the Holocaust, so I'm well aware of the danger of repeating the terrible mistake of spending more energy fighting against each other than fighting Hitler's fascist movement. And while neither Trump or Cruz are quite as explicitly genocidal as Hitler intended to be, and as Hitler made clear in his writings and public talks, he says, I can easily understand those in the Democratic Party today who want to be assured that Bernie Sanders supporters will support a moderate, pro-Wall Street, pro-militarism, pro-Netanyahu, pro-U.S. imperialism candidate like Hillary Clinton, since she, unlike Cruz or Trump, is still likely to support basic civil liberties and human rights for the people of the United States and is unlikely to jail her critics or incite racism, sexism, or homophobia in the U.S. So here's Michael Lerner saying, here's the argument against Hillary, here's the argument for Hillary. Okay, Bernie, what are you going to do? And what he suggests is, he said, what you can do is organize a force within the Democratic Party, because Bernie is now a Democrat. He's committed to this. He's going to be a Democrat the rest of his life. Okay, to organize a force within the Democratic Party that has the same determination to change the direction of that party as the Tea Party had within the Republican Party. He points out the Tea Party was able to totally shift the direction of the Republicans because they were willing to build local insurgencies against fellow Republicans whom they considered too moderate, and because they had an easy-to-understand set of principles like defunding government by reducing taxes. He suggests us calling this the love and justice movement, but he says Democrats are afraid of using the word love. So how about the justice and generosity movement? I don't know. See, I think what's happening right now is that the movement has formed around Bernie. And Bernie's not going to be around forever. And Bernie, he started this movement. Well, he didn't start the absolute movement. You've heard me say many times this has been brewing for decades, and really came to the fore with Bush's invasion of Iraq, and then the Black Lives Matter movement and the Occupy movement. And now it's coalesced around Bernie. But it really needs to coalesce around something larger than Bernie that's within the Democratic Party. I get the emails and the calls and not so much emails because I've got a pretty good spam filter, but tweets and whatnot saying, well, if not Bernie, then let's just go to the Green Party. Well, you do that, you're going to have a Republican president. I love the Green Party, but if unless you live in a totally red or totally blue state, where your vote will be essentially meaningless if you vote for a Democrat, it's just not a good idea. So how do we create this movement within the Democratic Party that isn't just a Bernie movement, but has been inspired by this? And how do we encourage the Democratic Party to open up more primaries, to go with more open primaries, because I think that this is actually a positive thing for the party. And we've got some clips of Bernie, and hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We also have clips from last night of Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton speaking, I think, directly or indirectly to these very issues that I'm raising right here.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.